What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2025 Senior Bowl, and more specifically, players that I've heard are rising and falling down draft boards after their performances in practice this week and in the game itself. Now, if this is your first time at the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button if you find something entertaining and or actionable in today's video. But without wasting too much time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these risers and fallers. All right, so I want to start with the positive before we get into the bad. So let's talk about these risers first. The first riser that I've heard about is going to be Arroyo, tight end out of Miami. Now, he's coming off of a 2024 season where he had 35 receptions for 590 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, the good news is he came into this weekend with some very good measurables. If you guys aren't familiar, they do take those measurements when you do get to the Senior Bowl. So you get the height, the weight, the hand size, all of that stuff that you would typically get at the NFL Combine. We do kind of get a preview of that. Obviously nothing official, but we do get those measurables there at the Senior Bowl. So those measurables, they did come in very good for Arroyo. Good size, good weight, everything you want to see out of a tight end. Now, he was consistently getting open all weekend long. He was showing some good route running skills, showing some strong hands, coming down with the contested catch. It was a very good week for him in practice. And that size, those measurables that we talked about at the beginning, that was kind of all on display here this weekend. We saw the good size, we saw the speed, we saw it all translate to the football field. So definitely things that we did think we were going to see, but it was good to see that confirmed there in practices this week from Arroyo. Now, that said, he's probably going to be creeping up draft boards. I could see him getting into the top 5, even though this is a very strong, a very deep tight end class. We do have a lot of guys that we do like in this tight end class. I think Arroyo has made a case that he could be one of the top 5 guys come April. Now, let's go to another riser. I'm going to talk about Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Coming off a 2024 season where he posted 80 receptions for 1,194 yards and 8 touchdowns. This is a player who definitely had the production, and we wanted to see it all be on display here at the Senior Bowl. Now, he did come into the week smaller than I thought he would. The height obviously is not great, being there at 5'9", just short of 5'10". But on a positive note, you at least have the weight that he came in with. That should give you some reassurance. That is a good weight for his size, so that does give me a little bit of reassurance for the overall small stature that he has, at least in the height department. Now, that said, coming out of the week, everything that we heard about Noel was great. It seems like he was dominating all week in practices with his route running ability, with his contested catch point, both in the slot and out on the boundary. He did get to play against some of the higher end corners there at the Senior Bowl, and he did play against some of the lower level talent, which isn't a bad thing. I do think getting that mixed bag is good, but it didn't matter really because he dominated against every single one of them. I do think Noel showed a mixed bag of talent that is going to translate at the NFL level, so that definitely gives us some things to be excited about for his profile going into the NFL draft, into the NFL Combine, some of these other things that we're going to see him in. And of all of the players that I heard some buzz about this weekend, Noel's was definitely the loudest, especially early on in the week, and it did translate onto the film, so that is very positive for Jalen Noel. Now, our next riser is going to be another tight end. It's going to be Mason Taylor of the LSU Tigers. He's coming off of a 2024 season where he had 55 receptions for 546 yards and 2 touchdowns. And although Mason Taylor is very young, he's just 20 years old, he looked very polished at the Senior Bowl. In fact, he looked like one of the most polished tight ends at the entire event there all weekend down at the Senior Bowl. I think he did a really good job in all aspects. He was very solid in the run game blocking. He did a good job running routes, and he had a few contested catches that I think showed off some of his ball skills. And I think that's going to be really good for NFL teams because they're going to be able to see a guy that they can bring into their offense and plug him in right away, because he's going to just be a well-polished, well-rounded tight end that should be able to translate to the NFL level very easily. This is a player that I definitely see rising up boards, definitely up draft boards, as NFL teams look at that and say that they could plug him into their offense no problem and have themselves a damn good NFL player. And now the last riser that I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be Bech, wide receiver out of TCU. Now, he's coming off of a 2024 season where he had 62 receptions for 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. And he's probably one of the bigger, if not the biggest story coming out of the Senior Bowl this last weekend, because he came away with the Senior Bowl MVP after catching a game-winning touchdown there in the Senior Bowl and dedicating it to his lost brother, who did pass away just a few months ago. Now, that story in itself is getting a lot of people rooting for Bech, and I get it because it's a damn good story and definitely something that you want to root for, but that shouldn't overshadow how good of a week he had there there in practices. Bech looked like one of the better wide receivers on the American team all week long, showcasing some excellent route running ability, some good hands, and an ability to contribute on running downs as he was blocking downfield. It's going to be interesting to see how much NFL teams put stock into this weekend, but it's no doubt that Jack Bech had one of the bigger weekends and one of the more inspiring weekends coming out of the Senior Bowl, and it's definitely going to be somebody who's going to be rising up some draft boards here over the next couple of weeks. But now that we've talked about some risers, we have to unfortunately talk about some of the guys who maybe didn't have the best performances this weekend, might be falling down some draft boards, and we're going to kick it off with Jalen, Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. Now he's coming off of a 2024 season where he passed for 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And Milroe had a lot of skeptics coming into the week just based off of his play style and some of the statistical results that he posted there at Alabama this year. Now, unfortunately for him, I don't think he was really able to put any of those concerns to bed after his practices here this week. It did feel like it was a fairly tough week of practices for Milroe. He was late on a lot of his throws, and it felt like he struggled to consistently place the ball where his wide receivers needed to catch it, so it did show some of those accuracy concerns that people did have coming into the Senior Bowl. Now that said, I do think that there's still a chance that NFL teams look at him and they see the elite athleticism that Jalen Milroe has, because his athleticism is elite, and they still decide that it's worth taking a shot on him. But you'd like to think that they would have liked to see some better results from Jalen Milroe coming out of a controlled environment there at the Senior Bowl this week. Now let's talk about a running back faller. I'm going to talk about Donovan Edwards, running back out of Michigan. He's coming off of a 2024 season where he had 128 carries for 589 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Edwards' 2024 season was interesting, going from college football cover athlete to a down year there at Michigan. Now, a lot of that probably is on the quarterback play that they had there at Michigan. That was very hard for them to overcome this season. But the Senior Bowl was supposed to be a good opportunity for Donovan Edwards to come out and showcase some of the reasons why we were so excited about him just a year ago. And unfortunately for Edwards, he really wasn't able to do that this week. Even though he didn't necessarily have a bad performance, he just didn't really stand out from the pack of running backs that was already in attendance there in Mobile. There didn't seem to be as many receiving down reps or pass blocking opportunities as they had in years past here in this year's Senior Bowl, which is unfortunate for Edwards because that is where he was going to be able to show off some of the skill sets that he does have as a 3-down back at the NFL level. So like I said, even though Edwards didn't necessarily go out and play badly, he didn't go out there and wow anybody either or make a way to stand out from the existing pack of running backs in attendance. And in a really strong running back class here in 2025, I think that by default is going to make him fall down some draft boards, but he will have the opportunity here later this spring to maybe turn some heads at the NFL Combine and or his NFL Pro Day. And now the last player that I think is a little bit of a faller this weekend, and this one's probably a little bit more controversial because it feels like there's some mixed opinions about his performance here this week, but I think Fannin Jr. is a little bit of a faller this weekend. Now coming out of Bowling Green, he had 117 receptions for 1,555 yards and 10 touchdowns, and that in itself is a massive breakout from a tight end position. That's enough to get people very excited about you coming into the Senior Bowl, and that's exactly what it was. He was definitely one of the more hyped tight ends coming into the weekend, but the problem is I don't feel like he did much to make himself stand out against some of the competition that he had there at his own position in the tight end room during this week of practices. And not only that, he did come in a little bit undersized. We did know he was going to be a tiny bit undersized this week, but when you have some of those concerns about the size, you want to see him showcase some of the talent on the field, and I feel like he did that in flashes, but it wasn't consistent enough to make me feel good about it. If you scroll through X or you go look anywhere, YouTube, whatever it may be, you're going to see plenty of videos this week of Fannin showing a little bit of a lack of explosiveness, a little bit of lack of savviness in his route running, and a lack of consistency from separating from the defenders there that were guarding him. And just my own personal opinion, I feel like he didn't really show much in the run game either as a blocker. Now he did get a little bit better as the week went on, but by the end of the week, he was also taking some reps at fullback, which obviously if you're looking for a fantasy football option and being a receiving threat, you don't want to see them in the backfield taking snaps at fullback. And not that that's necessarily a nail in the coffin for Fannin. I think he has a lot of opportunities to go out and prove us wrong. My overarching theme here is that I felt like he should have went out and dominated as a receiver, and he just didn't do that enough for me here this weekend. So as a result, I think he's going to fall down some of these draft boards. All right, so there you have it. There's some risers and fallers from the RISERS Senior Bowl here this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, especially if you found something entertaining and or actionable. Make sure you're also subscribed to this channel. That way you don't miss any of our future content over the next couple of months as we prepare for the NFL draft. And last but not least, make sure you go join our Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description, helping you guys with your Dynasty fantasy football teams 24/7, 365. I think at this point there's like 300 plus people in there that want to talk fantasy football with you. So like I said, there is no risk in joining that. It is free. But with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you today. So I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.